take a photo.
Only men now.
Only men. Well, we are going to continue with our program, and to do so, I'm going to introduce our guest speakers. First one is the Deputy Minister for Universities and Research of the Basque Government, Mr. Adolfo Morais.
Right, thank you.
𝗬𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁, who is the ENLIGHT Project Coordinator and Academic Director for Internationalization of Ghent University in Belgium, and Stephen Hill, Director of Research at Research England in the United Kingdom. Our three guest speakers will take the floor one after the other, and at the end of the session, we will open the floor for discussion with both the audience and the panel. The main objective of this session is to share different views on why a university should be impact-driven. In connection to this first question, what efforts have been or have been deployed by the different organizations, such as the European Commission, the Basque Government, Research England, and ENLIGHT, to make universities working with and for society. And well, we began this session by giving the floor to a guest speaker who, although she has not been able to join us in person, is going to address some words to us via video. She's Sofia Eriksson, Director for Youth Education and Erasmus Plus at the European Commission's Director General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. Let's see the video.
Dear all, I'm so happy to be here virtually at your conference. So firstly, I would like to commend the ENLIGHT European University for organizing the conference on impact assessment. This is a topic of great and increasing importance. ENLIGHT is one of the 44 European University Alliances supported by the Erasmus Plus program to date. And ENLIGHT has, I know, embarked on a very ambitious journey. You and the other alliances are charting the course for the future universities of Europe. You are paving the way towards a European education area. The European Universities Initiative is a flagship of the European Strategy for Universities, which was presented about 1 year ago. The lessons learned from the European universities were in fact central to the development of this strategy. We are now, together with you, in full co-implementation mode and aim to establish 60 European university alliances by mid-2024. And some 500 higher education institutions across Europe will be involved. Through the European Strategy for Universities, the Commission, together with the Member States and stakeholders, is working to strengthen European universities' ability to solve the great challenges of our time, to adapt to changing conditions, and to contribute to supporting societies through education, research, and innovation. The strategy emphasizes both excellence and inclusion, and it has 4 key objectives. Firstly, we want to strengthen the European dimension of higher education and research, and bring transnational cooperation to the next level. Universities built on shared values can better tackle big societal challenges. Secondly, we want to support universities as beacons of the European way of life and defenders of European democratic values that emphasize diversity and inclusion. Thirdly, we want to support universities to tackle the twin green and digital transitions. And we want to reinforce universities as drivers of European global leadership. Now, knowledge and future-proof skills are fundamental to meeting the great challenges of our time. Through education, research, and innovation, universities can have large-scale societal and economic impacts. Since universities are working for society, gaining insight into that impact is crucial. On our side, the Commission is developing a monitoring framework for the European Universities Initiative to evaluate the transformational potential and progress of the European Universities Initiative. Measuring progress on the implementation of the European Strategy for Universities is also important to evaluate the outcomes and impact of our European policies and programs, of course in synergy with national and institutional ones. That is the objective of the European Higher Education Sector Observatory under preparation. This conference is an excellent example of the many activities organized by the European Universities Alliances. I'm sure you have a special time there in the wonderful Bilbao to exchange views with and learn from the many knowledgeable experts in this field. I wish you all a pleasant and fruitful conference, which I'm sure will be of great benefit to the European higher education sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Eriksson, for presenting European Commission's views on the role of European universities' alliances to transform the European education area. Our next speaker is Guido van Wijlenbroek. As I said before, Professor van Wijlenbroek is the ENLIGHT project coordinator and the academic director for internationalization of Ghent University. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fernando. Can I have the slides, please?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether the slides will come. Yeah. Okay, good morning, everybody. And first of all, thank you to the Basque University team for organizing this important conference of ENLIGHT. It's maybe our first outreach conference that we have, because as my title of this short speech says, we are an impact-driven European University Alliance. My role, it has already been a little bit announced in the speech of Fernando, but is to, for those who don't know ENLIGHT very good, to introduce ENLIGHT and to tell you what we are doing and what are our objectives. So I hope, of course, that this conference gives you the time to know ENLIGHT better and to also know a little bit what we are doing. First of all, the ENLIGHT Consortium is a consortium, an alliance of 9 European universities with more than 300,000 students on board. So this already gives you the dimension of this alliance. We are all comprehensive, research-intensive universities who share a deep commitment to social responsibility. And that is why impact and impact-driven education and research is at the heart of ENLIGHT. The 9 universities are from the north, Uppsala and Tartu, Galway University in Ireland, then in, let's say, Central or Western Europe, we have Ghent University in Belgium, Groningen University in the Netherlands, Göttingen University in Germany. We have in Bratislava the Bratislava University, and then more in the south, Bordeaux University, and last but not least, of course, UPV as our partner in Spain. ENLIGHT long-term vision, it has already been cited by Fernando, is to create an open, integrated space, with what we call a European university system of the 9 universities, where students and staff can share resources, can learn together to have impact, that they are both educated in international content and global engagement, and that we have really that we together that we have let's say also investment in research infrastructure so that we can have impact. And impact is indeed at the core of our alliance, and that you see in the more developed objectives. We are trying to have a structuring impact on all partner universities. We try to have a systematic impact on local socio-economic environments. We have try to develop a successful model for institutional transformation of our universities in order to have more societal impact. And what is very important also, we develop a novel framework in order to address global challenges by the partnerships between higher education institutes and other societal stakeholders. And in the impact model, which will probably be developed more later in this conference, of course we look at inputs, what are outputs, what are outcomes, but finally what is our impact both on universities, learners and on society. Our main objectives are, first of all, to transform higher education in order to create agents of change in order to have globally engaged citizens who are, let's say, ready to change society and to have an impact in society. Second, to establish an open, integrated space among all ENLIGHT University partners. Third, to organize a dialogue and create knowledge with and for local, but also European and global stakeholders on global societal challenges, what we call the flagship areas. Come later to that, and to create and measure the impact of our activities so that we can indeed look whether we have a systematic change and transformation of our institutes. In this picture, which was at the core of our application, you see a little bit, but I will go into the details. The students are at the center. We have a mission. We have a framework for competence education, and ENLIGHT tries indeed to undertake a fundamental transformation of European higher education. I will go into the details. First, the ENLIGHT competence framework. The ENLIGHT competence framework is a kind of new framework for education that we want to establish in the 9 university, in the 9 ENLIGHT universities, where we have 5 goals with that framework. First of all, international learning, but much more through flexible learning paths, where the traditional, we have of course already 30 years of Erasmus, but it's traditional physical mobility, 1 semester, maximum 1 year, and we want to create much more flexible learning paths, also having virtual and blended education. Second, our educational model is based on what we call challenge-based learning, research-oriented, but based on, weaponing the students, the learners, how to tackle real, local, European, global challenges in society. And that you only do through transdisciplinary learning. Transdisciplinarity is at the core of this framework. That means going a little bit more away, I don't say that we are still in that framework of only having deep knowledge in one discipline, but going more and more away and to have also knowledge about other disciplines, because of course the global challenges are by definition transdisciplinarity. Also versatile education. That means not only having research-oriented deep learning of one topic, but also having competences of, for example, communication, dialogue with local stakeholders and things like that is very important. And of course also inclusive education, having all partners on board, but also having all learners on board. Lifelong learning is very important in that sense. And of course also students with certain disabilities or other, for example, financial difficulties, also to take them on board in this new competence framework. And that we do by concentrating on 5 flagship areas. These are the global challenges that we have a little bit defined, that we say, look, universities should work in the future on these flagship areas. Health and well-being, digital revolution and impact of digitalization is, I think, an important challenge for the future. Climate change, energy and circular economy. I think energy, we are, last year we have all seen what it means and how important it is. And of course also equity and societal, let's say, engagement is very important. And we do that not only as universities, but with cities and regions as our partners, as our stakeholders, because of course we say, okay, at universities we have to think globally, but we also have to act locally. And so the cities and regions where our universities are active are the focal points for major societal challenges. We use them and we work with them as test beds for new learning formats, and they are partners in our dialogues with local and global stakeholders. Second goal of ENLIGHT, so that's the ENLIGHT study experience that we want to give, is of course opening the university system and making, giving students, learners more flexible pathways for international learning. And that we have developed this framework, the so-called ENLIGHT stepping stones for students, where we combine, let's say, online, blended and physical mobility, and going from low intensity, for example, a teacher from another university who gives a virtual class during a class or a course of a teacher who is physical in another university, over virtual exchange programs and collaborative online learning, and going more to blended and physical learning. Of course, the Erasmus exchanges remain important, but it can be also the staff, the teachers who are going to be mobile, so that we can reach more students, up to, of course, developing joint programs and vertical mobility. That means that we hope that students have a bachelor or an undergraduate course in one university and maybe move to another university, for example, for their specialization, because that specialization is only available in one of the partners, and that also can lead a little bit to more efficiency at the European level, and that not all universities have maybe to have the same programs everywhere, because of course also we are in lack of resources. Then the ENLIGHT instruments for societal impact. So that is our third objective. Impact, there we have created 3 levels. We have created so-called regional academies, or urban academies, where we bring together the so-called quadruple helix of university learners, policy makers, local stakeholders and citizens in order to come together and to work with the students working on real local challenges together with the local stakeholders in order to create knowledge and impact for the local society. But we lift that up also to European dialogues. We bring these different regional academies together in events where we, yearly events where we bring all stakeholders across Europe in order to exchange how do you do, how it happens in other regions, and in order to create bridges over all these stakeholders. And finally also, and we have in the beginning of this year, we have organized the first global dialogue where we, and that's student-driven and initiatives, where we unite students but also with their professors, of course, and so on, in order to present their case studies, but also bringing in students from outside Europe in order to exchange ideas, for example, on sustainability, climate change, and the other flagship areas. And this was organized, of course, virtually, where we bring students from all over the world together in order to have a learning experience. It's not only about education. Impact is also about research, knowledge creation. And for that, we were very happy that also Europe, besides the Erasmus Plus funding, they also have given Horizon funding, and we have created the so-called ENLIGHT RISE project to support impact-driven research, where we want to have a comprehensive joint R&I transformation agenda in synergy, of course, with our educational component. We focus there on 4 levels. Open science, because if you want to have impact, it means that it should not only be what we create at universities in very closed formats of publications, but that the knowledge is open to everybody. Bringing together our digital infrastructure, because data are essential in the future society, and so how can our infrastructures about research data, how can they be connected over the 9 universities? Citizen science and civil society, bringing in what are models, how can we bring in citizens, civil society in our research that we are doing at universities. And finally, of course, in order to promote this new model of impact-driven research, I think we have to start with the early career researchers, and so we have a whole program for PhD students, and young postdocs, young teachers also, in order to help them in, let's say, this new way of doing research. RISE is also developing a methodology for co-creating the R&I agenda. Expand the co-creation tools of ENLIGHT Erasmus+, what we do with students, also in the innovation agenda. It's not only about research, it's also about innovation. And for that we create the so-called European Innovation District, again where we have these regional academies, which are working at the local level, but here more oriented towards industry partners and having a dialogue at the level of all 9 regions with industry partners about how can we, at the European level, have impact and innovation at the European level. We also, it was mentioned in the European speech, the Observatory of Europe. Also we create our own R&I observatory in order to involving civil society in our research, so that the researchers know with what are the experiences, what are the expectations of local and European industry about research. And finally, very important, of course, and it is the task of UPV also here in research, how do we measure social impact and of our joint R&I agenda, but I think that will be developed later in this conference. ENLIGHT has already created a lot of things. Here, I will not go into the details, but we have pilots of challenge-based courses, we have teaching and learning conference, we have bringing together, thanks to our partners in Tartu and Göttingen, we have created a digital course catalog where the different course catalogs of the 9 universities can speak to each other, if I can say like that, so that students can know what is available at our universities. We have created European dialogues. We have an ENLIGHT staff community of more than 700 people practically daily working on ENLIGHT and creating bonds between the partners. We have an ENLIGHT student network, a lot of spin-off activities, courses, conferences, projects, and very important, we see that at the 9 universities, ENLIGHT is the engine, the motor for transformation of the educational system and the research system. And that is what was the basic aim of our endeavor when we started with ENLIGHT. And of course, there is already an impact methodology. There is a toolkit 1.0, as they call it, to measure impact, and that will also be presented later in this conference. A lot of new courses have been developed, so-called BIPs. That is the model that we use. BIPs means blended intensive programs. With 𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 is virtual, where students from our 9 partners are brought together and they follow classes online by the professors of the different partners, and then they have a short intensive stay in one of the partners where they work on a local challenge, where they apply the knowledge that they have learned during the virtual part of the course, and then it is followed by a report that they have to make in order to pass for the exam, which is still necessary, of course, at universities. Besides courses, we have also trainings, both for students. For example, a very important part of ENLIGHT, we have developed a so-called global engagement module. The 3 universities, Groningen, Ghent, and Göttingen, have worked together on a framework. How do we provide this versatile knowledge tools to students? So it's not about new knowledge, but okay, you work on, for example, climate change or other challenges. How do you use other skills like communication, listening to local stakeholders, and so on, and that is learned in this global engagement module. And that is a framework that we want to develop more, and to now it's in pilot phase, and we hope in the second phase of ENLIGHT that we can mainstream that all over the university so that a lot more students can follow this module. We have a teaching and learning conference, but also a teaching and learning, created the teaching and learning lab, virtual lab, where online our professors can find methods if they want challenge-based education, if they want to apply it in their own classroom, how they can do it. We have developed train-the-trainer sessions, so-called challenge-based education training. Again, where we, specialists in challenge-based education, give trainings to our teachers so that they can apply it in their classes. We have a teacher education network because, of course, not only university learners are targeted, but at the end, if we want to have transformation in society, it's also important to start at secondary schools, maybe even at primary schools, and of course universities have a big role to play in that, because we have all teacher education programs at the universities, and also there, what does that mean working with students of secondary schools, for example, in order to make them agents of change, or better civil society people. What does that mean, and how can you do that? And we have created also there an EU Academy and even a submission to Horizon Europe in order to develop that model. We have worked with our doctoral network and workshops based on what is it, impact-driven research and digital transformation. So the last question, and that is the question for this conference, okay, this is what ENLIGHT is doing. Do we have impact? And that is, what is this work package, what was explicitly mentioned in our application, and I think there we are original among the 40 or 42 European alliances that, or even 43 alliances that exist, because the other alliances have, of course, also new learning formats, BIPs and so on, but we have explicitly mentioned in our application, we will look at impact and we will develop a methodology to measure that impact. And impact is different from performance. Performance we can easily measure. And the pictures here, for example, you can look through the numbers, how much participants in courses, how much teachers do we reach, and you see we have already a certain impact there. Even with COVID and the difficulties, we have been able to reach, we have first of all targeted the staff, the teachers, and now we target students, was of course certainly under COVID more difficult, but now we are targeting students, but also administrative staff and other people. You can measure also how many people we reach through social media. And we do that. We measure, for example, our YouTube channel is very well, and probably this impact conference will also be there. And so we reach much more than the 150 people now in the room, because you provide it through YouTube. But the real impact, that is what kind of transformation do we reach? And there you can, at personal level, students, teachers, do we really create new teaching formats? Do teachers teach in a different way after having followed, for example, a training of ENLIGHT, and long life learners? But also very important is, can we transform universities? Universities are big ships. It's very difficult to move in universities. But we aim for changes in governance of universities, changes in the educational system of universities, changes in the research and the services that universities render. And finally, the most difficult, of course, to measure is, do we have impact on societal level? The learners going through the system of the ENLIGHT universities, will they be really agents of change? Will they create changes in society? And will they create impact in business, in the society at large? So that is what we try to have. That is our mission. And then the question is, how do we measure that? But that is for the rest of this conference. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Guido, for introducing ENLIGHT to the audience, highlighting its transformative missions, both in education and research. It is now the turn of the Deputy Minister of Universities and Research of the Basque Government, Adolfo Morais. You have the floor. I don't know if the presentation is ready.
The Japan one, the last one.
The last one, yeah.
Thank you. Well, in the meantime, just as Fernando said, my duty is to be the, let's say, Vice Minister for Universities and Research. And some of the questions that I think you are trying to answer today are very relevant for the government, for the policymakers. I think that is one of the best examples that I could probably put today of the impact of the university, okay? So let's say that the university has a direct impact on policies in the Basque Country and in the Basque government. That seems to be obvious, okay? But it's not so obvious when you look at it from, the different perspectives. So politicians in different governments try to do things on their own, and set, bear the ships on, somehow. And sometimes they don't do it in a collaborative way, okay? So one of the roles of the different stakeholders is also to help, these directions to be the right ones. And I think the first impact of the, university system is basically that it's very helpful for, this very relevant task. But I would like to introduce the Basque Country very briefly. This is a presentation that I did yesterday to the Hiroshima University president that is visiting us during these days. Basically, the title is The Keys for the Future Development of the Basque Scientific Research Ecosystem, and the university is in the middle of it, okay? Some of the figures may explain why for the Basque government and for the Basque policy is so relevant, the role of the universities, okay? And specifically the role of, intensive research universities such as the University of the Basque Country. So we are a very small population, as you know. We are very proud of our country, of course. We have a strong industrial income, okay? So it's almost 25% of the GDP comes from industry. And we are also very active in research and development activities and finance. So basically we are, let's say, close or a little bit above or less than the average of the European Union. But the target, as you will see later on, is to become, one of the regions in which the research and development is highly financed. There is a high population of researchers working in the Basque countries, which is almost 2%. But we have a vast, and a wide system of universities, excellence research centers, but more than that, students, a high percentage of the population is trained at the university. So these, quantitative indicators may show as well the impact that has already been done, at a societal level. So universities and research centers, they help the government to get, funding, competitive funding that otherwise would not come to the Basque region. So basically, what we do is, again, having this in mind, try to provide a framework, and governments, one of the roles, of course, is to provide funding, as you know, okay? But, the way we provide funding, it's also a key thing for the universities and for the society in general. So basically, the government, the Basque government is very much, I would say, an organized institution in terms of planning, of providing this funding. So we have a plan until 2030, which is basically a commitment of the whole society. So it's not only the government, but also the opposition to the government comes to this agreement that the Basque government should invest in research and development activities, okay? So we are increasing gradually, and I can say that I'm very happy about that because it makes my job much easier, I have an increase every year of 6% of the, investment. So basically next year I know that I'm going to have a plus in my budget, okay? And the thing is, how do I invest this plus? You know, because one thing is that you get this money maybe 1 year, and that is very good news. But when you have a perspective of 10 years, then everything changes for you. Maybe not the first or the second year, but when you go, you know, you progress, then you lack, or you realize that you are lacking a lot of things in that, you know, vision for the future. So what did we do along with the universities? We basically decided that science and research, and not only technology, the Basque Country is a highly technological society, but not only technology, but science should have a place, you know, in this impact into the society and economy. So we came up with a strategy that basically the 𝗍𝗺 means flagship, okay? So it's a flagship project linked to scientific research, basic research, okay, which is basically trying to promote emblematic and long-range research initiatives, okay, in the Basque region. Okay, so what we are trying is basically to develop advanced capabilities, to be a tractor of the Basque research, to become a reference in our size, of course, in Europe, and to finally develop economic and social impact, okay? So 𝗍𝗺 is helping us to internationalize, you know, the Basque Country, and you will see later on. I was asked to provide an example, so I will go to that. It is trying to impact from basic research into the local and global challenges and to accelerate the growth of the research ecosystem. So we want to grow faster, you know, and the thing is, when you do these things, there is one thing that is difficult for politicians, is that we have to be, you know, we have to decide, you know, how do we do it. And basically, that means that you cannot do everything, okay? So you are narrowing your field, and you have many people that don't agree with that, you know? Basically, those who are not in the way. So we have specialized ourselves in 4 major areas, which are neuroscience, biosciences, we call it neurobiosciences, quantum technologies, neutrionics, which is neutron science, and high-performance computing and artificial intelligence. We started in 2019 planning this flagship project, okay? I mean, maybe you find many similarities with Europe and with many flagship projects as such. But the thing that we have been very successful in has been in, you know, one thing that is not always easy is collaboration, okay? So we started by, you know, promoting collaboration at a very low level. That means that, you know, excellence research centers in the Basque Country had our, you know, funding for promoting the collaboration among them. That was the first phase. In 2020, we started with this phase. Unfortunately, the COVID, you know, stopped it a little bit. So we resumed in 2021, and in 2023, we can talk about, you know, a major number of centers collaborating in these areas of research. But more important than that is how we are trying to pursue this impact in society. And of course, we are driven by economic impact as well. Okay, so it's not societal in general, but it's also economic impact. So we are trying to link scientific research, you know, with business, industry, and basically this kind of economic development. At the beginning, 2020, if you look at the, you know, cake, it was 100% excellence research centers. Okay, in 2-3 years, the excellence research center circle is, you know, it's opening to other stakeholders, universities, of course, collaborative centers and bio centers in the Basque region. And finally, the objective is that, science is going to be funded 50%, and the impact is going to be funded another 50%. But what is happening is that, usually collaboration in research is not just local, cannot be local. So it's very natural that collaborations get, from outside your stakeholder community. So in quantum technologies, in neutrino and neutron science, in high-performance computing, and in neuro and biosciences, what is happening is that we are bringing to this ecosystem, many stakeholders from abroad, international stakeholders, basically. Maybe some of you are mentioned in the slide. The interesting thing is how the ecosystem is growing with a high number of projects, almost 40 projects. That means that there are a number of students involved, a number of doctoral theses involved, a number of labs, a number of companies as well involved in it. Basically, we identify the companies, and the stakeholders, not just, maybe this slide is going too much into, the businesses that are collaborating with us. But I must say that we have many other stakeholders, not just industry or businesses, that collaborate with the, for example, quantum technology area. We started the program by, having a vision that we decided to be conservative in it. So we are going to invest 100 million euros in this project, so that we expect to get, 3 euros per euro. So it's 300 million euros in 10 years' time. So this is a very old slide. It is already passed, just with one of the projects that I will show you later, we are investing much more than that money, okay? Money is not everything. That means that we can invest, so we have the grounds for investing, We have universities that can support, the research. We have excellence research centers, we have collaborative research centers, we have technological research centers, and we have companies interested in this, kind of flagship project. Some of the key elements are related to also infrastructure. So we decided to bring to the Basque Country a Basque resource for electron microscopy, which is the reference in Southern Europe. But we are, bringing European research infrastructure consortiums to the project, or even, thinking about partners internationally like the Basque Nano-Neuro Network, which basically is linked with the Columbia University in the United States. Well, you see, what I can say about this strategy is that the impact is clear from the beginning, and it's already happening in the process. And the last project that we presented last Friday, and I think I can notice the happiness of many of the stakeholders, is the quantum technology and quantum computing project. So basically what we are doing is we are constructing a quantum valley in one of our major cities with large infrastructures, and one of them is a IBM Quantum System 1 that we established an alliance with IBM so that we are becoming a quantum computing center in Europe. The Basque Quantum Computing Center in Europe, IBM Quantum Computing Center, is going to be the second. The first one is in Germany, okay? And the idea and the difference between the different nodes, we are the 6th node to come. The difference is that, the EQUIR strategy and the different plannings are helping, to bring to the Basque region such kind of projects. So what can I say today? I think the impact, societal and economic impact, in such examples is already present, okay? And for that, the University of the Basque Country, and of course, ENLIGHT, is very relevant, or could be very relevant. So this is just one of the parts. I understood that I had to give an example, a specific one, and try to be didactic. And I think this idea of the government and the universities and the excellence research centers, it's being co-created together so that, you know, if I had to underline a key element for, you know, the impact of the universities, I would say that it is not just the impact of the university, it's the impact of the, you know, different stakeholders that, along with the university, can co-create this kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for your inspiring presentation on the importance of impact in the context of the Basque University system, the Basque University System Plan. Next, last but not least in this session, I would like to introduce Mr. Stephen Hill. He's the Director of Research at Research England in the United Kingdom. And UK Research and Innovation is a non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. So the floor is yours, Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here at this conference to discuss achieving impact from universities and research, something that's very close to my heart, and great to meet some old friends face-to-face, and also to meet some new friends too. So what I'm going to tell you about in the next few minutes is our experience of measuring and assessing impact in the context of the UK, and specifically around the National Research Evaluation, the Research Excellence Framework. Before I get into that, just very quickly say a little bit about Research England. Research England is part of a larger organisation, UK Research and Innovation, which is the principal public funder of research and innovation in the UK. Where UKRI is a relatively young organisation. We're coming up to our 5th birthday, in fact, in just a few days' time. And we've been working as part of that larger organisation for that time. Our mission is on the slide, create and sustain the conditions for healthy, dynamic, diverse and inclusive research and knowledge exchange in universities in England. And we do that principally through two routes. We're a strategic funder of university research, so invest around £2 billion per annum into university research and knowledge exchange. That's invested at the strategic level in universities, not at the level of projects and individual research funding. That's other parts of UKRI responsible for that. And our second principal function, which is what I'm going to talk about today, is carrying out a periodic national research evaluation, the Research Excellence Framework. And those two aspects of our work are strongly linked because a large proportion of our funding is allocated on the basis of the outcomes of that national research evaluation. So it's a quality-based funding system. So in the next few minutes, I just wanted to talk to you about four things, really. Just to give you some context and background of the Research Excellence Framework, or REF, and how impact assessment fits into that, and explain a little bit about how we do that impact assessment. I want to tell you a bit about what we've learned from doing that over the last decade or so, lessons about research impact itself, about what the conditions and the nature of the conditions that you need for research impact and the nature of research impact. I want to say a little bit about our evidence around the institutional response to impact assessment. What difference does having this assessment with funding linked to it make to universities in the UK? And then just conclude briefly at the end by saying something about the challenges of impact assessment. So the Research Excellence Framework, as I've already said, or REF, is a national evaluation of university research conducted every 7 years, and it's a process of expert review carried out by disciplinary panels. It's been carried out twice so far, in 2014, where we had 36 disciplinary units, and then most recently in 2021. In fact, the results of REF 2021 were published just a year ago in 2022. It was a little late because, as you might imagine, we got a little delayed by the pandemic. So we've had 2 experiences of conducting the Research Excellence Framework. In fact, in the evidence I'm going to talk about later in the slide, I'm mostly talking about REF 2014. So this is slightly out-of-date evidence, but still, I think, very relevant. The reason for that is that we're still in the phase of analysing and extracting evidence about the most recent exercise. In the exercise, there are 3 components. So universities make submissions concerning their research outputs, which are really, you can think of as their academic or scientific or research impacts. A second section on impact of research on society, which I'll say more about in a moment. And a third element is around the research environment or the conditions for research within the university. Just to say, when we talk about impact, I'll give you the definition in a moment, we're very much including impact on society in a very broad sense, including economic economic impact and commercialization of research. Important thing to say, of course, this is very much focused on research, on impact from research, not from the whole activity of the university. So that's our focus in this exercise. So that gives you this schematic just shows you the 3 pillars of the exercise, and importantly shows how in the last exercise we weighted those different pillars. So, so the academic impact or outputs part counted for 60%, the research environment for 15%, and the impact element a quarter of the assessment. And those proportions are reflected in the funding, so in the funding allocation. So that means for English and universities, and indeed universities in the whole of the UK, at the moment, they are receiving a quarter of the £2 billion or so we fund each year, dependent on their performance in the impact element of the REF. So just drilling down a little bit closer onto impact, this is how we define impact in the REF, an effect on change or benefit to the economy, society, culture, public policy or services, health, the environment, or quality of life. That's a very, very broad definition, purposefully broad to really allow us to recognize and reward all the types of impact that universities have. We make the assessment based on a set of case studies which universities submit. These are short, relatively short, structured narratives, around 5 pages. They make a link to some underpinning research. So this is very much about impact that's coming from research. So the case studies have to explain how the research in the university has led to the impact that's being described. And they need also to contain within this quite short narrative evidence and corroboration for that impact. We don't require universities necessarily to submit that evidence to us, but it does need to be made available for the assessment panels while they're making their assessment if they wish to see it. And the assessment is carried out by a combination of academics and research users, which proves to be very, very important in terms of making robust assessments of broader impact. You need both those academic research perspectives and the perspectives of research users from outside of the academy. That's one of our key lessons. One of the byproducts, in a way, of the way in which we do the assessment is that we have now a very large database of case studies of impact from our universities across the UK. So we have 2 databases, in fact. This one refers to the case studies from the 2014 exercise. There's just under 7,000 of those case studies covering all disciplines linked to underpinning research and available publicly for anyone who wants to access them. This is a really valuable research resource and has led to a lot of really interesting work looking at impact, how it arises from research, what the conditions are that lead to that, and is also a very valuable resource, I hope, for researchers globally to see how different areas of research can feed through into impact. So we have around just under 7,000 from the 2014 exercise. We have a similar database for the most recent exercise. So taken together, these data sets around 13,000 impact case studies and a really valuable resource. We've commissioned lots of research using these case studies. Others have done research. I'll just give you, just three findings that I think are interesting and maybe of interest to the audience here. There are many, many more research findings that have come from this data set. So the first one concerns the types of research that lead to impact. This rather attractive diagram, I don't have time to explain it in detail, details how for the 7,000 or so REF 2014 case studies that you can draw linkages between the areas of research in the underpinning research, which is the left-hand column on this diagram, and trace that through into different areas of impact, which is the right-hand column on the diagram. But the key conclusion from this work, which I want to just emphasize, is the importance of interdisciplinary research. So something like 2/3 of the research related to the impact case studies in the 2014 exercise involved research from 2 or more disciplines, and that finding is being replicated as we speak for the 2021 exercise. Another conclusion that we can draw from this data is something about the relationship between the time of research and how long it takes for research to translate into impact. So what this graph shows you is the date of publication, if you like, of the research that was related to the 7,000 case studies from 2014. And it shows that for the science disciplines in the green and red, that research came from across the 20-year period that we looked back over in that exercise. So there was research leading to impact that had been published only a few years before the impact arose, and also research that was 20 years old that was leading to impact. So across that whole range of time. For the social sciences and humanities, the pattern is slightly different in that there's actually a bias in those disciplines towards more recent research having impact, which is very, is an interesting observation. We're keen to get the outcome of this analysis for the most recent exercise to see whether this is a consistent pattern. And more qualitative research, this is work done by 2 researchers at King's College London as part of a book they wrote on impact and international affairs, where they looked at the characteristics of world-leading impact, which they can extract from the impact case studies. And you see on this slide, a number of features like long-term, the importance of long-term research in delivering impact, the importance of significant research funding, focused on particular impact areas. Engagement with practitioners is very important. Committing to resource to impact is really interesting to hear from the Deputy Minister a moment ago that the government in the Basque Country is doing that, is committing resource to research and to impact, and I think that's very important, and so on. So these case studies give us this really interesting picture of how impact arises and how it comes about. We're also able to look, at the way in which assessing impact in this way and linking funding to it has brought about change in our universities. And I'm about to give you a couple of conclusions from this evaluation that we conducted after the last exercise. One of the interesting observations from this evaluation was how assessing impact and thinking about impact it actually allows universities to understand what they do. So this, I really like this quote from a university. The most positive aspect of preparing for REF 2014 was to illuminate the vast array of research impact, which the university may not otherwise have realized it had. So research goes on, it has impact, but often it's hidden until you actually start shining a light on it through through some process of assessment. In terms of having the assessment, that's led to transformation in the way universities think about impact. So we see, these 6 areas come through consistently from our universities, where they're now setting out an impact strategy alongside their strategy for research and education. There are, posts, permanent posts in many cases, being linked to roles to help and facilitate impact. There are now systems in place in our universities for collecting and storing evidence of impact, and that's being done on an ongoing basis. And impact planning has become part of the way in which people think about research projects. And it's also now in many universities a criterion for promotion. So alongside research and education criteria for promotion, impact and generation of impact is becoming more important. And this was the picture in 2015 after the last exercise, and I would say from my experience of visiting universities, all of these things are now even more embedded in the university system in the UK. It's not without challenges. This is also, evidencing impact is difficult. I think that's certainly a key finding we've had, and one of the observations, again, from a number of years ago was from a university was that evidence is the hardest part, and the case studies were often selected on the basis of the quality of the evidence, not necessarily on the quality of the impact. And that I think has changed over the last few years, but it is important to recognize evidencing impact is a challenging thing to do. So just finally, to say a bit about the challenges of impact assessment and the approach that we've taken. Impact case studies are great. I don't believe, and I can elaborate on this in questions if you're interested, but I don't believe there are a set of kind of magic numbers, indicators that you can use to measure impact. I think it needs to be qualitative. But case studies are difficult to aggregate together. So, one of the purposes we'd like to put the case studies to is to make the case for increased and continued investment in research. It's difficult to put them together into a short, aggregated format. There are selection biases when you have case studies assessed for assessment in this way, and I think one of the biggest biases is that the cases tend to focus on what I would call exceptional cases, not some of the more routine but really important types of impact that go on in universities. And the case studies do have a tendency to promote a linear view of research use, so that because they're a narrative that comes in a particular order, they tend to reinforce this, I think, incorrect idea that research happens first, and then you do something with that research to deliver impact. Whereas in reality, in many cases, research and impact go hand in hand as researchers and stakeholders work together to solve problems, and case studies aren't a very good format for addressing that. There is the challenge of attribution versus contribution. To what extent can the impact be directly linked to the research? And I think we've moved very much in the direction of looking for contribution, evidence of contribution, and trying to move away from this idea of having to demonstrate that research was the only thing that led to the impact in a particular case. Timescales for impact are long, as I've illustrated already, and that can make capturing impact through case studies or through other methodologies tricky. And causality can be hard to prove, so being really certain about whether the research it was the causal effect of the change in society that you're measuring. But I think all of these challenges are important to bear in mind, but also ones that we can grapple with using the type of methodology that we use. So thank you for your attention for the last few minutes. I hope I've given you a brief intro to how the impact assessment works in our national research evaluation, and I look forward to any questions, comments, or discussion that we have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hill, for presenting the great work you are doing in Research England. I'm sorry, I think we are running very badly behind schedule. I was told that we have not time to open the floor to the audience. So we have to close this moment, this session. I would like to thank you, to thank the 3 members of the panel for their participation. And I think, Igor, we have to go now to the first floor terrace to take a group photo. Yes. Yeah? And after that, we can go back to the Laboa room to have a coffee. Okay, thank you very much.